Hello everyone, welcome to another time-lapse sketching tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to sketch this rooftop scene of Florence. And this is the reference photo that you can download from the link in the video description below. This time-lapse video was actually created from the full-length tutorial I have made for my patrons. The full tutorial is about 45 minutes long. So if you guys want to check out the full-length tutorial, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. The link to my Patreon page is in the video description below. So for this particular sketch, I wanted to make sure that I can fit all the elements onto the page. So I need to draw them a bit smaller than usual because I find that I have a tendency to draw things bigger and bigger as I go along. So right at the start of the sketch, you saw me use pencil to mark out the composition. That is basically to help me make sure that I can fit all the elements onto the page. So I mark out the dome and the area in the center first because that's the most important thing. There are two ways you can approach this sketch. What I'm showing you here is me drawing from the bottom towards the center. The other way, of course, is to draw from the center and then draw outwards. The name of the building in the background, the one with the dome, is the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, if I pronounce that correctly. So this particular sketch is a bit challenging in the sense that there are a lot of diagonal lines, there are a lot of shapes. This scene is not a 1-point or 2-point perspective scene, so there is no obvious vanishing point. Actually, all the buildings that you see in this scene, all those buildings have their own vanishing points, and most of those buildings, the vanishing points, they do not coincide. So for this particular sketch, you cannot find a vanishing point and use that vanishing point to help you get the angles of the diagonal lines. So with this sketch, all you need is actually observation skills and patience. Because there are so many elements to draw, it can be very easy to get lost in the details. You draw a few elements and you are lost because you forgot where you are, and this happened a few times while I was sketching this, so I have to constantly refer back to the photo and slow down to figure out where I am, what I have drawn and what I have not drawn. By the way, the fountain pen that I'm using is the Pelikan M200 fountain pen. The ink is SketchINK, which is waterproof and dry, and the paper is Derwent Inktense paper, which is made with 100% cotton. So this is the completed pen and ink sketch. The composition is actually a bit off because you notice the dome is right smack in the middle of the page. This composition will look so much better with the dome on the right side rather than be in the middle of the page. So I started painting with the sky using Verditer blue, and for the roofs, right now I'm painting the roofs and also the side walls with Burgundy yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a nice color that you can use straight from the tube because it's a muted yellow, so you can add water to dilute it and paint with it, and the yellow will look nice and not appear out of place. For the red, I have Anthraquinoid Scarlet and Deep Scarlet for the darker colors. I realized that with Anthraquinoid Scarlet and Burgundy yellow ochre, I wasn't able to mix the bright orange that I like. So this orange that you see is was actually mixed with Hansa yellow, if I remember the yellow that I use. Anyway, I used some leftover yellow from my watercolor palette. So I'm using Anthraquinoid Scarlet, Deep Scarlet, and a mix of yellow to paint all the roofs. And the roofs are very fun to paint because you can see they are almost connected as these interconnecting shapes. So it's really fun to see the roofs like that. That scrap piece of paper that you saw was used to test my shadow colors. So the shadow colors are actually mixed with the 3 colors, the limited color palette that I mentioned earlier. Burgundy Yellow Ochre, Verditer Blue, and Anthraquinoid Scarlet. For the darker areas, I use Verditer Blue and Deep Scarlet. So for this sketch, I painted the sky, which is the big shape, and then I painted the walls and the roofs, the other big shape with burgundy yellow, and then I painted the roofs with the bright orange. And this next step is basically me just adding the shadows and adding the darker colors, adding spot blacks or really dark colors to certain areas such as the windows, areas that are just black. So this sketch is almost complete. I just need to add some more details. I'm using the clip to add splatter marks onto the page, and I'm using Deep Scarlet to add those darker splatter marks. I wanted to add some more details to the roofs in front, to the roofs in the foreground, because for elements in the foreground you can see more details, so you can add more details there to create the illusion of depth. As for the roofs in the background, you don't have to add details for them. And I noticed some dark clouds in the sky, which is why I am adding another layer of watercolor of blue onto the sky. The masking tape that I'm using is actually just some random Scotch tape. It's a matte textured Scotch tape. Alright, so this is the completed sketch, drawn with pen and ink, colored with watercolor. So as mentioned earlier, the composition is a bit off because the dome is right smack in the middle. This sketch would look so much better with the dome off the middle towards the right side. And also while I was sketching, I actually ran out of space on the left side and I had too much space on the right side, so I have to use my artistic license to add more details to the right side. If you want to learn more about urban sketching, you can check out my many free tutorials on YouTube, or you can support me on Patreon as well to get access to even more tutorials, like full-length tutorials that I have created over the last few years for my patrons.